boom blowers. Okay, I guess we're on now. Um, oh, let's see. Let's see.
Welcome to Watch Outside with your host Bill Sanders. I'm joining him. I'm Clive, Watch Wrangler, joining him, and we're talking about challenges for intermediate collectors in the field of horology. Bill, how's your morning going?
So far so good. Put up our Sunday video, which was a review of Abdul's collection, and that got going. And still, I tell you, I don't know if there's any room left, but I hope there is. Still hoping that we'll get some more people to come to the Watch Time show in New York, which is, let's see, it'll be a week from this Thursday, or actually a week from this Friday. That's today, Sunday, yeah. So it's coming up, and it's a great time for people to get together who only know each other from videos and chats and things. So anyway, it might be sort of fun.
Bill, what watch are you wearing today?
Oh, my watch? It's one of my favorite watches to wear. It's the FP Journe Chronomet Souverain. How about yourself? Which one you have on?
Well, I've got on a relatively recent one and a recently old one, but it's a Omega Speedmaster Professional from 1971 with an 861 movement, and I think the reference number is 145.022-71.
That's cool. Yesterday we went to see First Man. I think it's about Neil Anderson landing on the moon.
Neil Armstrong?
I'm sorry?
Neil Armstrong?
Armstrong, right. It was a really tense movie. I mean, like, I thought it was really good. One of the things, they were showing him wearing this great big watch before, and do you think it was a Speedmaster? What was that about? Because the thing looked like about a 42 or 44 millimeter.
It's a 42. If you'll notice, first watch worn on the moon. That's why they're called moon watches.
Oh, I sort of guessed that. There's one well advertised vlogger who seems to like him a lot. Oh, looks like it's wonder where everybody is today. Well, we can talk.
Absolutely. The thing is about doing videos on the internet is that people can actually pull it up and watch it later.
Yeah, that's true. True enough. One of the things we were talking about, I think, is, and I've had the same thing happen to me too, and that is, somebody says, "Oh, that's not a real thing," or "that thing has been changed," and they don't know what they're talking about. I started to tell you about this a modified ETA 6498 or 7, one of the two, and it had the 3 bridges on it as opposed to one big bridge. Okay.
Now that would be Lloyd Bridges, Jeff Bridges, and who's the other one?
London. No, London.
Bridges.
London. Anyway, the thing about it is that some guy immediately pops up and says, "Oh, those aren't real bridges." It's like he had no idea. He didn't know what he was talking about, but so then I thought, well, gee whiz, maybe there aren't 3 bridges. Well, why would they, especially for, when you get into watchmaking, having 3 bridges is really a plus for, working with a watch, because then you don't have to juggle quite as much. And so, but this guy pops up, and I noticed, and I mentioned too, you had the big thing with what you call Kermit Gate. Hello?
Yeah. By the way, if you have Tanzel on your phone list, block him. Totally.
True.
Never mind.
Oh,
Now that
okay.
is okay. Now keep in mind, Kermit Gate. There have been some instances. There have been some instances of people at one point trying to turn ordinary subdates into Kermits. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I see
well,
now.
that's because when Rolex first came up with Kermit, they kind of cheaped out a little bit. It was the anniversary edition. So what they did is they took the average subdate, which in this case at the time when they first started was a 16610T, and then they kept it. So what they did is they took the ones off the assembly line, they slapped on a special dial, the maxi dial with the maxi hands and a green bezel, and they changed the paperwork and the hang tags, but on the watch itself, it still said 16610T.
So they had the same reference number for a different watch.
Right. Now, if you looked at the
Oh.
one, if you don't have the paperwork, you basically have to send it into Rolex or an AD for a service, and it will come back. And what they do is they pull it up on Rolex's own internal. Rolex has a list, a database, and they check with, and Rolex has at least updated in their own database. This watch with this reference number is in fact a 16610LV.
There's something in science that they call type 1 and type 2 errors. And I always get them mixed up, but a type 1 is where something is false, but you think it's true. And a type 2 is when you think something is, what did I just say? The other way around. It's true, but it's really false, or you think it's false and it's really true. And that's one of the things that I found is that we've been talking about a little, in that here you have, I'll call it a type 2 error. Somebody says it's false, but it's true. And this is the problem, because people will pop off with no kind of real evidence otherwise. I mean, it's one thing to say, just what you told me is that, sort of going through all of the permutations of what you have to do. That's one thing. But another thing is to say, oh, that's absolutely X, or that's a fake, or that's this. I see that all the time. And whether or not there is any validity to that. Wait a minute, we got 19 viewers and we're not getting any conversation. Let me see if I can change that. Hello, say something.
Something.
Hello, say something. Bing, bing, bing.
Can you hear me? What, you can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you're talking about the people on the board.
Yeah. There wasn't. Yeah, there are 20 viewers out there, and everybody's quiet for some reason.
Well, they might actually be listening. Here's the thought. Sometimes actually, I do this every once in a while myself. Very, very occasionally, I log into a live stream and I actually listen to the people talking.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone on the live stream is over the age of 45. Just saying.
You're over 45?
Yeah, I just turned 50. I'm going to turn 50. I'm going to turn 51 in a couple of weeks, actually.
I'll be over 45 soon, too. I'll put it this way. I'm over 45. Okay. What I was hoping is that, we're talking about sort of intermediate challenges and different kinds of problems that you run into, sort of, when you have, I'll put it this way, when a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. That's sort of in the middle spot right there. You know some things, but you have enough sense to listen to other people. But some people will just, spout off, and they'll say things that, then you end up spending all this time to sort of undo it. We were talking about it in terms of the type 1 and type 2 error. Has anybody run into those? Any of you guys listening? You can type, I guess. Well, I guess not.
Yeah, well, in the words of Shakespeare, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Was that Shakespeare?
Yes.
Everything is Shakespeare. I had really, I mean, there's, it's really funny to see the Shakespeare in the Bible. I've been seeing all these quotes. I go, my God, the Bible said that. I had no idea. Or, some other religious tome. So, okay.
Well, here's the funny part. I'm in the flyover states, and I'm telling you what's Shakespeare, and I should be telling you what's in the Bible.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I took this wonderful course that they had that Harvard offered on edX, and it was called Early New England Poetry. And the reason I was interested in it, I've always been interested in the early Puritans, and they, of course, they settled up in this area. And the thing I found out about it that was so interesting is the way, starting up in Massachusetts, the way it grew so rapidly was that whenever there was a disagreement, a religious disagreement, they would move and start their own town. And so it kept growing, and they were all Puritan. Puritan was a pejorative term for sort of a type of Calvinistic belief, and but it was sort of funny is that, I don't think it's that way, and off they go. And also, that Geneva got its start with John Calvin too, or at least the watchmaking part of it did. So anyway, okay, so.
And the funny part is Hobbes is often left out of is often uncredited for his part.
Yeah, Hobbes is usually left out. You're right.
Yeah.
What was he? Was he the one that had a short, nasty, and who was that? Was that Hobbes? Short, nasty, and brutal, or something like that.
Short, brutish, brutal, and nasty, brutish, and short.
Yeah. Hobbes the optimist. Anyway, okay.
Now, by the way, Abdul is actually chiming in saying, "Hey, Abdul, how you doing? Nice collection. I saw it earlier with that Bill did." He said, "No, we were listening, guys."
Oh, okay. I can't see the group chat. Is that a characteristic of?
I can monitor the group chat. No, you have to open another window, but I can go ahead and monitor. Okay. Let's just say I'm used to doing that. And
yeah. Okay. Now, I usually do it on the other one when there's just one person, and then the chat comes up. And the reason that I'm afraid of opening up another window is that it'll just eat up more bandwidth, and so I just leave them closed. But anyway, you can go ahead and be the interpreter.
Oh, sure. We've got a few people joining us. We've got a lot of mutual. We share a lot of friends on YouTube. Jack Purcell is joining us. Mason 1, Manette Soprano. I apologize in advance for mangling your names. Don Rogan and Abdul. Dave P is wishing us good morning. Neil Chaudhry is saying hi, Bill and Clive from very wet Hampshire, you in the UK. Dave P is saying it's good to hear. It's a good movie. So few of them lately. Asa K is telling us both hello, as is Vegas Milgoss. Now, Mason 1, of course, I flashed the Moonwatch, and he's saying Omega should release a modernized 321 movement. Well, the thing is, yeah, no kidding. If they did that, and they could sell those puppies, I'd say 15,000. They could just come up with a 105-012-20 2019, those things would sell. I think they'd sell for 15.
Is that the original movement that they had in the Moonwatch?
Yep, it's the Lamagna 321, hand wound.
321. That was the number I was trying to remember for it.
Those things, those are getting crazy.
And price-wise? Okay. Well, you never know when you're going to get mistaken for an astronaut. Anyway.
Well, actually, my great aunt Rose, Tom Stafford, when he left NASA, and he moved to Weatherford, Oklahoma, and my great aunt Rose was his babysitter.
Neil Armstrong's babysitter?
No, Thomas Stafford. General Thomas Stafford, United States Air Force, and also NASA.
Yeah, his name is familiar. The guy that I used to fly with, the guy that I owned an airplane with, he was one of the people he was an engineer, and he worked on the moon lander. His Martin Marietta was one of the subcontractors who worked on that. So that was sort of cool. I was watching his moon lander. I said, "Oh my God, John worked on that." It was weird. That movie, though, I enjoyed it. It got really, the critics liked it a lot better than the general audience, and I think the general audience, man, I tell you, it seemed to have the realism of the kind of tensions that must have been going on, because what they used to say is, well, we're taking off on the lowest bid on a government contract, which is.
Well,
anyway.
at least we weren't the Soviet space program, where they say Yuri Gagarin was not the first person to go into space. He was the first person to go in space and survive coming back down.
Oh, I didn't know they sent somebody else up who didn't make it.
But they didn't want to talk about that because otherwise it wouldn't glorify socialism.
Yeah. True enough. Okay.
Now, Asakay is asking you a question. Dr. Bill, have you seen the Habring 2 Doppler Felix pointer date in the Felix Green?
I love that watch. That's one I want to get. I've got 4 watches, actually sort of like 2 plus one or the other. One is the Lang and Hein Frederick III. I love that watch. That's pretty expensive, though. The second one is the Habring 2 Doppel Felix. Okay, that's fantastic. And the third one is the Rolex Cellini Prince, which I really like. And the other one is this one by Cartier that has this unusual movement in it that was, I don't know how many they made of them. They didn't make very many, but it's sort of like, if you know the right numbers and everything, it was a movement that was made by F.P. Journe and 2 other guys, I think Halderman and somebody else. They were young watchmakers, and they had this thing called T8 something or other. And it could have been that, yeah. And they made just a handful of watch movements, but my God, the watch movements they made. And it's on top of that, it's a hand wind, the kind I like. So now, those are the ones that are on my list. But really, I've been shifting over more and more to making my own, because that is so much fun, and you can really have a lot of fun doing it too.
Now, Steve Bow is asking, where is Bill in the watchmaking process? What can you do?
Oh, man. Yeah. Look, later this afternoon, I'm going to have another stream on doing that in detail and trying to find out more people who are interested in it. What I'd like to do is to sort of, and this is intermediate, Clyde, I'd love to have you join us too, is to have a group who made their own watches. They're not professional watchmakers. Some of the groups that I'm sort of talking to now, you have some people who really know what they're doing as far as watchmaking is concerned. I was looking for something not quite that way. I was thinking of, I forgot, I can't pronounce the French of it, but it would be the Association of Pretentious Watchmakers, who could, the French sounds so much better though. You may be familiar with the group that F.P. Journe started called the AHCI, the Association of Swiss Independent Watchmakers. And the people in it, I don't think it's Swiss. It's because there's German and Japanese watchmakers I know that are part of it. I think some Chinese watchmakers too. But I mean, all of the really top independents are part of it, like Marco Lang, Terry Voutenland, and all of the really top-notch watchmakers. So we can have one for pretentious watchmakers. I thought it'd be sort of fun.
Now, there's a couple of interesting questions in the live stream comments. Javier Vega His name is Vega. He lives on the second floor. Sorry. Hi, guys. Do you know anything about the movement in the Schwartz, Etienne, Roma, Otto? And Bill, let me answer that question first.
Okay, what?
No.
All right. I guess I better. I'm like I said, I'm afraid what'll happen as soon as I bring up something else with a stream. This whole thing will go slow down. So I'm going to leave it at this and have to see the comments later, or wait for you to comment on it. I don't know. You know, sometimes I might have pretty good. Without the what is it? The Bluetooth or whatever runs my my wireless headset, it might be working better. Let me try it and see what happens so I can respond a little quicker. Hang on a sec. Okie doke.
Now, also a lot of people on the live stream are also saying that they're well into their 40s. So, and I think the younger folks are just getting up, so they don't have enough energy. They haven't had their coffee, or they're still getting over their hangovers, so they don't have the energy right now to be rowdy.
Yeah. Well.
Now, Abdul. Now, and we'll come back to Javier. Oh, Bill, you come back to Javier's question about the movement in the Schwartz, Etienne, Roma, Otto. Now, Abdul Rahman Abdel Razak, or let's just call you Abdul if you don't mind, Abdul. I think a challenge that I face is always wanting to get a special watch, save for it, and after a while, I find a more affordable one and buy it and leave my first plans. In other words, when it comes to horology, Abdul is looking for Miss Right, but he settles for Miss Right now.
Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Let me see if I can get the let me see. Live event going on. No, I don't want that. I can't find it on my other thing. Oh, rats. Oh well. I'm going to all right. Okay. One more time. What was Abdul's question?
I think his statement is the challenge that he faces, that he's wanting to get a special watch and he has to save for it. And after a while, he finds an affordable one and leaves he settles basically, or compromises.
You know, that happens to all of us, I think. It's not often a compromise. You find other things that you didn't know about, and there's some really good deals on it. From Friday's video, apparently a bunch of people got some great deals on H. Mosers that they didn't know about. And sorry about that, Clyde. Anyway, but
that's why the one I just bought this morning, I got it before I told you about it.
Okay, good. That was a good idea. But you know, the thing of it is that this is a problem with our hobby. I mean, we try to focus on something, and something else comes along. You know, I'm reminded of Homer Simpson. You know, there's distractible, something shiny over here, and off you go. And so I don't know if there's a cure for that or not. The one I've been trying to work on is
squirrel.
Is to
horological ADD.
I'm sorry?
Horological ADD.
Yes. That's it. Horological amateur watchmaking kind of stuff. That's a lot of fun though. So, you know, I don't know. This is a point where it's sort of fun to be a ranked beginner making watches. And the reason the same thing happened in programming. When I was first starting a programming language, I was much better at teaching it than I was when I became more familiar with it, and then wanted to go into some advanced stuff. And I get into the advanced stuff, and everybody I was talking to didn't know what I was talking about. But on the other hand, when I was first starting, I was answering the questions that they were asking. And the same thing with watchmaking. I'm asking all the beginners questions because I am a beginner. And I'm finding some interesting stuff. There are a lot of the same kind of arguments. It's sort of like, Rolex or Omega type of arguments that they have. Should I get a, I don't know. I don't know either one of them that well, but we'll say, should I get a Man on the Moon or should I get a, what's that Rolex?
Daytona.
A Daytona. Well, not a Daytona. Is that in about the same category?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's those kinds of things. And there are very lively and vocal people on both sides saying you should do this or you should do that. Once you get a little more accustomed to it and you're able to separate people who really know stuff from people who think they know stuff, I think you're much better off. And I'm at the level now where I'm one of those people who knows they don't know stuff about watchmaking. So I'm learning about it, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm learning a lot of stuff from, people who, sort of, they're ahead of me but not too far ahead of me. And so that I can learn from them because they're answering the kinds of questions they had day before yesterday.
Right. Well, but one of the things I've learned, since this new iOS, since these Mac OS update, I'm seeing a lot of spinning balls lately if I try to multitask on my computer.
Yeah, you got that's what I'm worried about. You start getting that spinning pizza. So I'll leave it like this for now.
It's a beach ball. But I think one of the things I've learned is that in this hobby, you almost end up learning more about yourself than you do about the individual watches.
How so?
Because and let me go into this next question. This kind of feeds into it.
Okay.
All right. Now, Thomasaurus Rex, which is a very unusual name with a
Thomas is a cool guy. I know Thomas.
And he said, very often there's always knowledge being shared on the forums that isn't based on anything. And because there isn't too much literature on the internet, people call it gospel and it becomes the fact. So I think in a lot of ways, and one of the things I think he's correct, that there's almost like and I know I've caught myself being guilty of this, being part of an echo chamber, as opposed to other watch channels who get caught in star chambers, but that's not really the topic here at all. But we're talking about echo chambers.
Yeah.
But so a lot of times, I think when you're new, you're insecure, you follow the herd, so to speak. And again, I'm not talking about another watch channel. But you follow the herd, you're insecure, you do you kind of base your choices about what everyone else likes. But sometimes you go off on a detour, you go off on a tangent, and you discover something that you really, really like.
There's a great ad I saw. I think it's from Geico, but I'm not sure. There are all of these wild beasts crossing this river, and there are these crocodiles in the river that are snapping at the wild beasts as they cross. And there are these two wild beasts on the bank saying, "I think we'll take the bridge." And I think that is, in general, it's that I don't mind reading, and there's certain people I know who are way up here, watchmaking wise, and they told me don't go much further than the bottom rung for me, and I've agreed with them 100%. But let me show you an example of a book that turned out to be much better than I thought. It's called Beginning Watchmaking. Now, one thing I know about is book production and how to make a book. And this one is terrible. It's a terribly made book. They use black and white pictures. It's hard to find anything. The index isn't very good. The table of contents is like they got 4 levels, and trying to find something is very difficult. However, the more I got into watchmaking, I would find myself going through here and spending a lot of time looking it up. Now, had I been smart, two things. One, I would have gone to the back, and in the back, they give me a web page where not only is the whole thing in a PDF file, it's in color. And so I downloaded that. And if I want to find something, I just put in the search thing on the PDF file, and up it comes. It's in color. It looks more like what you're going to have. But this thing is full of terrible photographs. Sort of, in terms of putting the book together and editing and everything else that goes into a book, not very good. But boy, that PDF file is fantastic. And this book, by the way, was recommended by lots of people in watchmaking because it does have things there. But as a book, it's production-wise, it suffers.
Well, the old saying that those who can do, those who can't teach.
The funny thing about it was that quote was from Bertrand Russell. And Bertrand Russell was one of the founders of the London School of Economics and Political Science, the one that everybody just calls the London School of Economics. So he was a great teacher. So it was, there's something to that, though. This is why I think in collecting watches, if you don't collect them, you're not doing it. But on the other hand, if you don't learn about it, then you end up perhaps doing two things. One, getting crummy watches, and two, not knowing what to look for, I think. Anyway.
When I was in high school, I was smarting off to a classmate beside me. I said, you ever heard that saying? He said, yeah. I said, that's not all of it. I said, and what's the rest of it? I said, those who can't teach, coach, and those who can't coach, administrate.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And Mrs. Wilson overheard part of it, said, come here. What did you say? I repeated it. Come with me. And I thought it was going to be taken. So instead, I thought she was going to take me to the principal's office through the teacher's lounge. And then she had me go up to Mrs. Goodwin and say, tell her what you told me. And then Mrs. Goodwin started snickering and said, no, go tell her. And it occurred to me, wait a minute, I'm not in trouble. She thinks. So in other words, all the teachers were like.
And also, too, she was covering herself because it was Clyde. Whoever got up there. Yeah.
But sometimes it's possible to leave the group, leave the herd, go off on a tangent, go divert. You can screw up, but sometimes you discover who you really are through a watch. I mean, one of the things I've discovered, there are things I tell myself that are important to me, but it doesn't match up sometimes when I come across a watch with those attributes.
I think that, what is it? H.L. Mencken said no one ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American public. That might be more general to the European public as well, too. And it's like if you start and really end looking for certain kinds of values in a watch, the problem is what are those values and how do you look for them?
And sometimes, like I said, and there's a disconnect between things that you espouse and who you really are. It's possible, in other words, you think you have ideals or principles, but you espouse them, but but they don't really jibe.
Yeah. Well, that sometimes too, there's something that is you have better taste than your budget can handle. That's another problem.
Well, and here's the funny thing, and there's going to be a lot of groaning and there's going to be a lot of bitching about this, but actually right now, one of my favorite watches is probably my cheapest watch.
Which one is it?
Well, I think it's a weekend watch, and I hate to say it. Rudy Dobson basically once said that he thinks that people call certain watches beater watches because they really like them, but they're too insecure to like it, so they pass it off as a beater watch. But it's a weekend watch. Let me show you the back first.
Oh yeah, yeah. I recognize the back.
Yeah, and Bill, I bought this on your advice when you basically said, don't look for the brand. Do a search. Look for the movement.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, it's the phony Flieger. It's the B-Uhr because the second dial with the very short hour hand. This it's one of the cheapest watches. It's even it's PVD coated, which I'm not wild about, but it's usable. I think the movement's attractive, and this thing is just so gosh darned accurate.
This watch I set off that I mentioned to you that I made, I adjusted it, and it was plus 0.3 seconds a day. Most of my other watches don't come anywhere near that, but this one I was able to adjust, and then I measured on the time grapher, and I know exactly what you mean. I didn't want to send it. I didn't want to send it away, but I had promised it already, and so off it went. The one I'm working on now, I have it promised to somebody, and I think my third watch is going to be one that's all for me, and that's the one I'm thinking of getting the movement with the 3 bridges, so that I can go in and work on it. I can play with it. I can adjust the regulator and do things with. Yeah.
Plus 2 seconds a day. Plus 2 seconds a day. This thing is as accurate as a modern Rolex, which this is superlative chronometer status, really. For manual.
Yeah, where are the small seconds on that?
The small seconds are at 6 o'clock.
Okay, so it's a 6498, right?
Right.
Yeah, those are fantastic. Yeah, that's the Unitas / ETA. Now, here, I have one that valuable right now. Most of mine, I get the ST36, which is a Siegel clone of either the 6497 or 6498. The reason I do that is that I really want to do something with a watch, and so I take it apart and break it, or lose a part, or something like that. And it costs less to break an ST36. And then for my good watch is going to be the ETA Unitas 6497 or 98, probably the 98. Because I like the small seconds at 6 o'clock or not at all. First one I made, it took me 2 movements. One got broken to get the small seconds out of there, and I just wanted to have a sweep hand, not a sweep hand, but just hour and minutes. And that's the one I did with the enamel dial and the sterling silver hands.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I like the manual. I like the big onion crown on it.
Oh, I love those. I love those. Those are great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like the thing is about a manual wind. It's almost like what's the picture by in the Vatican about the
15 caps. Yeah. In like this one, handing them God handing, who was it? Adam. This is the one I'm working on now, and it's got. I wanted a brass one, and this is going to have a nautilus, a nautical look to it, and so I'm working on that. I'm waiting for some stuff. These are the straps I got for it, and that's the thing I like about this is that you can pick your straps, you can pick everything, and put it together the way you want, and it's a lot of fun. But this is why I still do go nuts when name a brand. I don't want to name a brand because someone will have their feelings hurt. But there are all these brands that have these same movement that I'm putting watches together with for $100, and they're paying $5,000 for it. And to me, it's like
it's a ripoff.
Exactly. I mean, like here, my Beauvais, the reason I like it so much is that the movement was made for the case, for the watch. Everything was from bottom up. And okay, yeah, so these are expensive watches, and I like that. The other ones I like is this one has the Jaeger 736 in it, which, it was made by a guy who had to go to jail because he and his buddies stole like $1 million worth of Rolex cases. It was like, how can you not like something with a story like that, as opposed to something that they've been cranking out for years and hasn't changed one iota? And it turns out to be a really good movement that was carried on by the people after. Well, he was up the river, making sure he didn't drop any soap when he took a shower. Anyway, the more, this is what I like about watch collection. No matter how much you think you know, there's always something new that comes along, and it's why I think what we started talking about initially was that you have these people say, "Oh, that's a fake," or "That's stupid," or that, and they don't know what they're talking about. They just they see a picture of it and they decide that, and that's what drives me nuts. But on the other hand, if you go looking at it, and some reviewer had said the movements in the Jaeger 736 were ETA movement, or ETA from an ETA Embauche. And so I thought, well, he must know what he's talking about. Then I took it to a master watchmaker, and he said, no way. So it's been, ever since then, it's been a real adventure trying to find out more about this movement and why so many watches make it. I mean, not make it, but use it.
Well, and again with the Franken, now keep in mind the Kermit Gate, as the President of the United States would say, fake news. That is something that is controversy being stirred up by a couple people to rile up another watch channel. But the thing is, that people I've taken it to, the bezels, they said, oh, it's an Alibaba bezel. Well, have you seen the back of it? No, you haven't. Yeah. On the other hand, my guys who have been working on watches, and some of these old farts, I mean, like I said, the watchsmiths with gray hair, love those guys because they've been working on Rolexes for, in some cases, 40 or 50 years. And they said it must be the most, he said one of the things, if it must be the most thorough counterfeiter ever, because he actually replicated 10 years worth of grime and debris underneath the bezel. But, so yeah, it's just like, no. In other words, it has been on the watch since it was made. But sometimes it's the groupthink, because we all have different preferences. We all have different aesthetics. We all have different things that we we have different values.
Yeah.
And again, to go to the, of course, we've got the tanned seal, and then his same-sex biracial. Those two are my favorite same-sex biracial couple, common law, to our Great White North. But it's just like this. On the other hand, his Asian mail-ordered bride, male M-A-L-E order bride, loves Breguet. I mean, he really likes to go upscale, and this guy loves Breguet. He loves Patek Philippe, but he has his own certain set of preferences, and that's fine. But on the other hand, I think part about being a mature adult or at least what people tell me, about being a mature adult, is that you can recognize that everyone doesn't have to like what you like, that we're all different. And just because someone doesn't have your same preferences or sense of aesthetics, doesn't mean that they're an idiot.
Yeah, I know. There's a certain term that's used to describe watches that you think are cheap and crummy and so forth. And I've seen it used against some really good watches by people, again, who don't know what they're talking about. And, you know, to do that, to be, I don't know, so dismissive, means that you're not willing to learn anything new. And that means you're probably pretty stupid. I mean that. Is that the people that do that
or closed-minded might be a different way to
put it. How can you be...
Or ignorant. Perhaps maybe ignorant.
Well, ignorant implies you can learn something new. If you're stupid, that means you can't learn anything new because you're not going to look for anything new. And
again, we're not specifically mentioning other watch channels. I just want to point that out specifically.
No, we're not. We're not. I don't have time for other watch channels. I got enough critics as it is. I think somebody gave me a big paddle and I stir it up every now and then. I got my own deck to deal with. But you know, I think for all of us, we can really have a good time if we can discover new things and what other people like. I really believe that. And if we don't, then we're stupid. And we going calling names to things we don't like. That just says I'm stupid and I can't think of another word to describe what you have. And yeah, if they want to be that way, I don't want to have anything to do with them. I want to talk about watches.
Well, you know, to me, you know how I classify this watch?
Yeah.
It's an I don't care watch. It's like, I love this.
Hey, listen, so is this. This is an I don't care watch too. It really could care less what people think of it. And yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and like I said, let's go to the mail order bride. And this guy, and like I said, in a lot of ways, I don't want to rag on him too much, because in a lot of ways he is kind of a purist. He has his own taste, he has his own preferences, he has his own style, metrosexual. But I'm not going to even say who it is specifically, but my folks know who he is. On the other hand, just because if something doesn't match up with what he likes, some people can be really, really dismissive. And this person, he doesn't want to buy it. He doesn't want to buy a watch unless he can taste Ben Clymer's DNA all over the dial. And I'll just leave it. Well, I'll just leave it at that.
You know, I tell you something. It's really funny. There was some movement or something I was reading about or trying to find out about, and this one watchmaker just sort of went ballistic on Ben Clymer and Hodenke. And it was like, if they like it, it must be bad. You know, oh my God. You know, it's sort of going the other direction. You know, for the most part, I've got a lot of respect for the guys who write it out, but there's certain ones, and there's certain publications or online or otherwise that are basically making sure they don't offend the thing that they're reviewing. And that's understandable. I understand that. And there's one in particular that has a price list for reviews. Now, the ones that I respect, they have two. One are called sponsored reviews. These are paid for, and then there's regular reviews. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. Either that, or they just choose watches to review that they really, really like. I don't know. This is why we're on our own to some extent.
Well, and to create, there's a lack of transparency as well, because is Houdinki are they for watch enthusiasts? Are they into watch news? Or they watch sellers? And they're kind of all three, really. And I don't really, even with the news broadcast, even if they report on something, they'll say, we have to report that we need to state the disclaimer that Fox News is the parent company of our organization. But
fake news. There's something. The one of the things that I find most important in all of them, no matter who they are, is if they can identify the movement. That's important to me. A lot of times they seem to be guessing at the movement, and if they have a reason why, at least you can follow that up. But sometimes they don't mention it at all. When they don't mention what the movement is or what the base of the movement is, that's not a very helpful review.
No. Otherwise, you might as well just be looking at fashion watches. I mean, and the thing is, I'm surprised why I like this. I mean, this watch is, I'm surprised by how much I like it. Because what I like about it, it's got a great movement. It is easy to read. It is super accurate. It pays homage to the BUR or the Flieger watches. I call it the phony Flieger. But it does have the same type of dial. It has a very authentic movement for it. And when you look for it back in the day, if they would have had PVD back in the 30s and 40s when this was made, they totally would have made these. As a matter of fact, a lot of these war watches were base metal that were chromed or plated.
Oh man, I tell you, I've got a Beauvais from that period, and there were some parts of it that people say, "Oh, that must be replaced or this." They have no idea that during that period that they were using all different kinds of parts because it was a war. There was a war on, and that was a very interesting kind of thing. And then I saw an advertisement with my watch, and it had exactly the same pushers and everything else. That was simply the one that they had. But if they had some that had different looking parts, it was because, well, maybe that was what was available. There's so much to be learned that when you get dogmatic and start making pronouncements, and myself included, I mean, I sounded like I was totally anti-ETA until I realized it wasn't ETA. I just don't like being misled by an inexpensive movement in a very expensive watch.
Or if they take an ETA, I mean, one of the things is that I've got a friend, we have a mutual friend. I'm not going to say his name, but he has no hair. But
in my case, that's everybody I know.
Well, and if he was on the live stream, he'd be lying down in his bed by now. Okay, I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
Okay, now you know who it is. But one of the things he actually likes is Chrono Swiss.
Is what? Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, it's just like primarily they use ETAs, but he said they don't just take them off the shelf and just slap them in a watch case and call it a day. He basically said they do a very good job of going through, reassembling it, getting everything right, and getting the precision and the accuracy down. It's possible to take an ETA watch and put a lot more effort and a lot more time into it, and have something that performs. I mean, just simply the in-house versus out-house.
Yeah, you could. But the thing of it is that what they talk about it as their chronographer certified movement is they simply go in and adjust what they do is they take a watch and they'll test it like this, they'll test it like this, they'll test it like this, and so forth. And that takes time to do it. And so the more expensive ones, they simply adjusted at 6 different positions. And, that's okay, fine. But I think more important than that is the quality of the production behind it and underneath it all. And you know, after taking apart Solitas and Seagulls and ETAs, I get a little better idea. The quality of the gears and so forth, for example, in an ETA are better than they are in a Seagull, but the Seagulls aren't that bad. Just like the, you know, if I compare FP Journe with an ETA, the ETAs aren't as good, but they're not that bad.
Right. But it's on. They took something that may. I think the initial promise about in-house versus in-house. I think the promise or the implied assumption is that people would take more time and put more effort and more money into producing their own movements. So you'd have a level of quality that you wouldn't get with just an outsourced movement, basically. But in a lot of ways, that's been turned by the watch companies themselves into short to almost grossly deceptive marketing speak.
Yeah, that can happen too. I know. Like if somebody gets an Orient, they get a in-house Orient movement, and so there's that. And the same is true with well, you take for example a Vaucheur. If you have a Vaucheur movement, you have a really good movement. If you have, but then when you look at what's been done with Vaucheur movements, there was this one article, I think it's in Hoddenky or whatever the name of that magazine is that they compared what happened with Parmigiani Toric. Let's see, the other one I think was a Hermes, and then the other one was a some other one. They had 3 different watches. One of the watches sold for $70,000, and I think the lowest price one was something in the 20-ish or between 10 and 20,000. Now, the watches, the movement itself, off the shelf, was pretty expensive to begin with. You're talking about like between $1,000 and $1,500 for one movement, whereas these other ones, they're like $100 for an ETA movement, and I'm glad that they're not more expensive. And being as cheap as I am, I get the even cheaper Seagull knockoff of it. But I'm not making high horology watches. I'm making watches I can do stuff with.
Okay, now here's a question, actually, Bill, that's right up your alley. So he's tossing in something is tossing you a nice big softball.
Okay, one more time.
Hey, okay, this is a question from In Something. What are your thoughts on the Mosier 40.8 millimeter dress watches? Do you think they're too big?
The H. Moser dress watches?
Yes.
I love mine. Mine, I have a 6.5-inch wrist. No, a 7.5-inch wrist. Weight Watchers wasn't that successful. And I wear a, pretty good sized Moser all the time. This one is 40 millimeters. This one is 42 millimeters. And you can see, it's not that big. Now, one second, let me get it out of here.
Is our mutual friend minus the hair sending you text messages of watches? A Star Wars.
Let's focus on it. Yeah. Okay, now here's my H. Moser. This is a good sized watch, and it's at
Henry double hairspring.
Right, and it's one of my favorite watches. It's that I have another one that's really quite comfortable. It's my little Patek Philippe. It's like 32 millimeters or something like that. It's quite small. It's one of the early Calatravas from 1968. That watch is wonderful. It's just a wonderful watch. And so, I don't worry too much about this. The other thing about these is that I don't know if you can see it from the side, but see the slight bow in it?
Yes.
And that's it just sort of flows on your wrist. Go ahead.
Now, I actually did try on, believe it or not, a Patek Philippe yesterday. I'm throwing it up on the screen now.
Yeah.
Complicated one, yellow gold, 36 millimeters. And actually, it's quite legible at 36 millimeters. But, you know, it power reserve, it has a second hand, sub-second hand at 4. It's got a moon face and a date at 7, and of course between 10 and 11 it has the power reserve.
Yeah, no, that's a good looking watch. I had a Audemars Piguet with something like that, and I got it mainly for the moon phase, and I think I enjoyed the moon phase for about 2 days. It was like nothing happened. I mean, it's like watching paint dry. And I guess I was too impatient for it. I learned a lot about moon phases though, and finally it ended up a trade-in on a Vacheron Constantin 1921. So, you know, but it was, you know, it was a very small watch. In fact, I think it was too small with all of the subdials and stuff on it.
Well, the nice thing is because of the contrast and everything else, I think it's well designed because there's a lot of information on that watch and it's quite legible. That's what I like about it. Yeah. And of course, I was talking to somebody else online, and of course, you know, also it has a hinged case back. So I thought, you know, solid. You think it's solid gold, but actually, you open up the back and it has a display under sapphire glass. And of course, I was asking a person, and they're like, well, if you're going to get an asymmetrical dial, you need to go with a Lange. And I'm like, you little bitch. I mean, it's just like,
yeah. And I've had, let me give you one more example. It's getting to be close to rolling pin time. So let me get my last thing out here. This is what happens with prejudices. Okay, this one is Maurice Lacroix, and this is the one I've mentioned before. And when I got it for the movement, which I suspected was sort of a ETA Ibos. Turned out to be, these are really good quality watches. I talked to this master watchmaker who knew about them. He said, yeah, they are. And I was really surprised because on another one I'd showed him, he said he got screwed. He's one of these kinds of guys. But I think that, you know, we have to hold our prejudices very lightly because there's chances are there's certain things in there. It's like that Cartier that I like. I'm not crazy about Cartier movements, but there's some that have, you know, they got a prize at the bottom of the Cracker Jack box.
Now, actually, N Something does have a very good question, and he's been posting this.
Okay.
He's unsure, should he get a Mosier or should he look at a Reverso? But he already has a few JLCs. I don't know precisely what JLCs he has.
Oh, man, you can get a Moser. A Moser's, they are so good. Here's the back of my Moser. The quality of the movement, the quality of everything. You know, when you pick up a good watch, it's got a certain heft to it. And H. Moser, there's just, I tell you, it's that.
So you're saying there are Mosiers and there are posers.
Is what?
You're saying there's Mosiers and then there's posers. Why am I not in marketing? Why am I not in marketing? Jesus Christ, is coming naturally. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. Anyway, well, listen, guys. It was I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm sorry I didn't have everybody's questions coming up. But thanks anyway. And this afternoon on my regular streaming, I guess, where I can see the responses, I invite everybody. We're going to try to start the what's it called? The Association of Pretentious Watchmakers. But it's in French, which makes it even more pretentious. So if you're interested around 4 o'clock, I hope you can come too, Clyde.
That would be 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 p.m. Central.
Right. Yeah, 9 o'clock. Yeah, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. What is that? GMT. Greenwich Mean Time. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming, and Clyde, you too. So hope to see you later.
Thanks for having me, Bill.